The stars blinked through the viewport like distant eyes, countless and cold. Elias Voss sat still in his restraints, breath steady despite the tremble of the dropship as it entered the upper atmosphere of Deadless 9. The gravity surge pressed against his chest, but it wasn't that which tightened his muscles. It was the silence, the waiting, the knowledge that something more than a mission was about to begin. Across from him, two Ixari soldiers murmured in their clicking tongue, glancing at him with unreadable expressions. Even through their armor, they looked uneasy. Voss didn't blame them. Most of the non-human coalition had no real understanding of what humans were capable of. Not really. They'd seen the footage. They'd heard the stories. But they hadn't felt it, the way violence sat in the marrow of a species forged on a death world. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. He remembered. 3 years ago, the Accord had extended the invitation. A pan-galactic alliance, built on mutual cooperation and peaceful development, opening its arms to Earth. Humanity had accepted. Of course it had. What choice did it have? But peace had terms, and the terms included trials. They called it the Apex Initiative, a simulated field test for new member species, placing them in a controlled wilderness alongside other predators to measure resilience, adaptation, and integration potential. On paper, it was a stress test. In truth, it was blood sport. And now Voss was their chosen subject. Not by accident, not by lottery, but because he volunteered. The ship groaned. The Ixari clutched their harnesses as the hull rattled, lightning scraping across the windows in violet arcs. Deadless 9's atmosphere was chaotic, full of electrical interference and toxic pockets of gas. No permanent outposts survived there. Only the test zones remained, and even those shifted weakly. Voss tightened the straps across his chest. He wore no weapon. That was part of the test. No advanced tech. No firearms. No exosuit support. Just flesh, instinct, and grit. The dropship hit ground with a bone-rattling shudder. Voss stood, unfastening himself in a single motion, and moved toward the hatch. One of the Ixari spoke, its translator buzzing. Survival rate for this zone is 9%. Voss looked back once. I don't do percentages. The hatch hissed open. He stepped into hell. Heat blasted his face. The ground beneath his boots cracked and shifted, like stepping onto the skin of a slumbering beast. The sky above churned with ash clouds, bruised purple and black. Trees unlike any on Earth loomed in twisted spirals, their bark pulsating faintly, as if alive. And somewhere, not far off, something screamed. A data node blinked from a stone pillar nearby. A camera. Watching. They were always watching. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He walked into the forest and vanished. From the orbital station above, the Council of Species observed in tense silence. Delegates from the Threx Dominion, the Zarelian Matriarchy, and over 30 other civilizations watched the feeds. For most of them, this was entertainment with stakes. For few, it was necessity. How long before he dies? Murmured Scholar Veg, adjusting the crystalline slats of their ocular sensor. Humans are difficult to predict, said Krell, the Zarelian ambassador. They react emotionally, impulsively. Faradine, Earth's liaison, said nothing. Her hands were folded neatly on the desk, her expression unreadable. Below, Voss moved like a phantom through the wild. His boots left no track. His hands brushed the ground, reading the story of recent movement. A herd of hoofed bipeds, panicked, scattered. Something had hunted them. Not far. He followed the signs. The beast came on silent feet. 8 limbs, bone-plated, eyes like shattered mirrors. Voss dug beneath its slash, rolled, and came up with a sharp stone in hand. Not enough. He broke a branch, cracked it at both ends, and jammed it into the creature's gaping maw as it lunged. It bit down. The wood snapped, but so did its jaw. He took its shattered fang and drove it into its throat. The body spasmed, collapsed. Blood hissed on the toxic soil. Voss stood over it, panting. Then he smiled. In the station, Krell's fronds twitched. Primitive technique. Effective, said Dean. But for how long? Veg asked. The apex predator has not yet revealed itself. Dean looked at the feed. Voss was stripping meat from the corpse, inspecting it for toxins. He tested the blood against his skin, waited, then bit. He would not starve. Back in the forest, Voss moved camp every hour. Never left signs. He learned the terrain faster than expected. Not just how to survive in it, but how to use it. Vines became traps. Bark became armor. Insects became signal carriers. And he wasn't alone. He found the remains of others. Bones. Shatter visors. Carved symbols in rock. Not Terran. Not recent. Some had died fighting. Some had died begging. He buried what he found. Not from sentiment. From strategy. If he left the bones, something else might use them. The apex was close now. The forest had grown quiet. Even the wind had stilled. Voss crouched beside a ridge, peering into a chasm where movement stirred. He saw it then. Vast. Black chitin armor. Eyes that burned in clusters. It moved with grace, despite its size. Intelligence. It wasn't just a beast. It was a hunter. He watched a hunt. It didn't just kill to eat. It killed to learn. Left traps. Used bait. Waited. He wasn't facing a creature. He was facing a rival. Back in orbit, the council began to murmur. The predator had killed 6 test subjects in the last cycle. No survivors in its sector. The Accord had designed it using genetic libraries from extinct predators across 3 galaxies. It was supposed to be the ultimate measure, and it was circling Voss. Night fell, cold and brittle. Voss laid no fire. He wrapped himself in heat-scavenged moss and waited beneath the root canopy of a fallen giant. The sound were gone now. No insects. No calls. Just the slow thud of something moving across stone. The beast came at dawn. It struck with silence, its claws slashing down into the earth where Voss had lain. But Voss was already on its back. He drove a shard of alloy, salvaged from a drone shell, into a gap in its neck armor. It shrieked, twisted, tried to throw him. He held on, arms locked around a spine ridge, driving the shard deeper, deeper, until it fell. He tumbled with it, bleeding from a dozen cuts. One arm barely usable. But he stood, and he roared. The cameras caught it all. Above, silence fell in the council chamber. Faradine leaned forward. Now do you understand? No one answered. And Voss, bruised, bloodied, breathing fire into the dawn air, turned his gaze to the skies, where he knew they watched. He didn't raise a fist. He just smiled. The blood dried in dark rivulets across Voss's chest, flaking off as he staggered toward the corpse of the creature he had slain. Every step was a protest of torn ligaments and cracked bones. His left arm hung limp at his side. The shoulder had dislocated sometime during the melee. With a groan, he pressed his back against a boulder and pushed hard. The joint snapped back in with a sickening pop. He bit down on a scream. A low beat flickered in his helmet. Linnea's vitals were gone. Confirmed. No movement from any of the squad. He was alone. He exhaled, slow and heavy, staring at the body of the Vorthak. Its hide was scarred and pierced, ichor leaking into the dust. It looked smaller now, less mythic, but only to him. For the ones watching from above, this moment would be burned into memory. And they were watching. Up in the orbiting chamber, the tension had shifted. No longer spectators. The delegates now saw themselves as witnesses to something they hadn't prepared for. On a circular platform rimmed in starlight, feeds projected scenes from the battlefield. Frozen frames of human ferocity. Ambassador Krell of the Seraphii clicked his crystalline talons nervously. The trial was not intended for victory. And yet it happened, murmured General Orvax of the Core Dominion. He didn't just survive. He dominated. Bare-handed, whispered another voice. That level of aggression, said a Zarelian biologist, without enhancement or tactical support. Do we know what training regimen this human underwent? A display screen illuminated Voss's dossier. Earth Command's file was sparse but grim. Born during the siege of Lagos Arcology, survivor of the Pacific collapse, veteran of the Lunar Purge. Decorated, resilient, not enhanced, not modified. Natural selection at its most ruthless. He's not the strongest, a Terran observer finally said, just the most stubborn. On the surface, Voss activated his emergency beacon and crouched beside the carcass. He didn't sit. Sitting invited collapse. Sitting told his body the mission was over. It wasn't. His eyes unfocused for a moment. In the blood on his fingers, in the cold wind pressing into his wounds, memory returned like shrapnel. He was 19 again, thrown from a downed convoy into burning Amazonian mud. The shriek of railgun rounds. The screams of civvies crushed beneath drone tanks. His CO dead. His rifle broken. Enemy mercs had descended like wolves, and he'd crawled into a foxhole with nothing but a knife. He'd fought for 36 hours, losing consciousness more than once. When the reinforcements found him, he was holding off the last of them with a sharpened pipe. 6 dead at his feet. They called it bravery. He called it refusal. Refusal to die. Refusal to lose. That same instinct pulsed now, keeping him upright. Because he knew this wasn't over. They'd sent one apex predator, but it wouldn't be the last. The Accord needed more than a spectacle. They wanted a conclusion. Voss turned his head toward the rising sun. The air had changed. Charged. He could feel it, a presence far off, watching. Not the observers. Something else. He reached into his suit, retrieved a small capsule from his collar, and popped it between his teeth. A stimulant cocktail dumped into his system like fire through glass. His vision sharpened. Muscles jolted. Pain receded. Not gone, but dulled to something manageable. A new signal pinged his HUD. Multiple signatures incoming. The AI whispered in his ear. He stood fully. Let them come. In the observation deck, debate fractured into shouting. The Elvari Chancellor demanded a recall of the trial program, citing barbarism. The Jundari emissary, all eyes and tendrils, countered that the demonstration had been just and fair. Only the humans had delivered results. We were meant to test their adaptability, said the Zyrelian scholar. Instead, we uncovered their nature. Ambassador Krell gestured to the screen, where Voss's form now stood defiantly atop the dead predator. That is not a soldier. That is a force of evolution. We must consider what it means to coexist with such a species. Meanwhile, a deep chamber beneath the Accord's core vault opened. Hidden logs were accessed. Ancient files detailing Earth's war history. Thermonuclear winters. Biological plagues. Generations raised under orbital bombardment. Entire continents reshaped by war. Humanity had been tested again and again. Not by trials. By extinction itself. And it had always clawed its way back. Back on the planet, the wind had shifted again. Voss's HUD lit with new markers. Movement. Dozens. Some large, others quick and sectal. Not Vorthak, but perhaps related. The Accord hadn't sent just one. They had released an ecosystem. The experiment wasn't about victory. It was about containment. Observation. Could a human survive not just a predator, but a hostile environment engineered to kill? He holstered the broken knife anyway. It had served him once. It might again. Then came the sound. Not a roar, not a screech. A chorus of alien howls, overlapping, echoing off stone. Something ancestral stirred in his spine. He would not die here. He moved with practiced precision, climbing a ridge for height advantage, surveying terrain, identifying choke points. His squad had fallen, but their lives bought him knowledge. Intel. Time. He would make it count. One of the creatures broke the edge of the pass below. Sleeker than the Vorthak. Feral, quadrupedal. Its hide shimmered with bioluminescence, and its teeth were transparent blades. Behind it came more. Voss inhaled once, then charged. Up in orbit, silence fell again as the human disappeared into a swarm of killing machines. But the feed continued, and in the shadows of the viewing gallery, not all were afraid. Some watched with something older than fear: admiration, curiosity, hope. The ridge exploded beneath Voss's feet, a flash of energy tearing through the stone like paper. He flew backward, shielded only by the shattered remains of a drone he'd ripped from its mount to use as a makeshift barrier. He hit the ground hard, blood blooming again beneath his ribcage. Adrenaline roared like static in his ears. He rolled, came up with a fist-sized rock in his hand, and hurled it into the throat of the nearest creature. It staggered, choking, and Voss lunged with the jagged hilt of his broken knife, driving it deep beneath the thing's jaw. The second kill was Messier. He used its own talon to tear open its chest. As it slumped, two more took its place. He moved without thinking now, each motion born of necessity, not choice. His suit was a ruin, armor plates shattered, servos lagging, HUD flickering. But his mind was crystal, not survival, domination. The ecosystem had evolved to kill anything not adapted to it. But Voss adapted with every breath. Every wound taught him the shape of the threat. Every drop of blood was a payment for knowledge. He set traps with debris, learned how the creatures moved, predicted their pack formations. When one used a sonic burst to paralyze, he shoved a spike of bone through its amplifier. When another cloaked, he tracked it by its shadow. Hours passed, maybe days. The sun never seemed to move. Or perhaps he was moving faster than it. Above, in the station, the council had split into factions. Some saw him as proof of humanity's recklessness. Others saw power. But a third group had begun to whisper of opportunity. Ambassador Krell stood in private conference with three others: General Orvax of Kor, Scholar Veg of Zyril, and a Terran political liaison named Faradine. Her uniform bore no rank, but she held herself with the calm weight of consequence. He should be dead, Veg said flatly. But he isn't. Dean tapped her fingers on the table. We warned the Accord. Human conflict isn't an aberration. It's a pressure-tested system. We don't just survive violence. We optimize through it, which makes you dangerous. It makes us capable. Krell's crystalline fingers tapped together, a gesture of contemplation. Earth seeks alliance. What are you offering in return? Dean looked toward the feed, where Voss was using the armored hide of a fallen predator as a shield while setting fire to a nest. A future you can survive. Back on Daedalus 9, the sky darkened. Storm systems native to the planet's volatile atmosphere rolled in like collapsing mountains. Lightning, blue-white and needle-thin, lanced between clouds and ground. For most species, this was fatal terrain. For Voss, it was terrain. He'd broken a spear from the wing bone of a flying beast. His left hand was bound in cloth and resin, fashioned from glandular secretions of one of the insectoid creatures. It hardened quickly, almost armor. Almost. He moved into the storm. They followed. Three of the large predators, similar in build to the Vorthak, but faster, leaner. Pack hunters. They circled. He let them. When the first charged, he ducked and drove the spear through its mouth, impaling it to a jagged rock. As the others pounced, he triggered a lightning rod he'd jury-rigged from his suit's shattered battery core. The storm answered. Electricity detonated across the pass. Two beasts screamed, flailed, burned. Voss collapsed to his knees, skin steaming. He couldn't hear. His ears had ruptured. But his vision, still clear. He crawled through the smoke, found one still twitching, and ended it. Above, the council chamber erupted. General Orvax pounded his claw into the table. This is not strategy. This is poetry. Scholar Veg stared, awestruck. He weaponized a planetary storm with scavenged tools. Faradine said nothing. Her eyes tracked every motion of the man on the screen. He had stopped killing for defense. Now he was hunting, claiming territory, denying resources to the things still alive. And they were growing afraid. Fear, the final measure of dominance. In the lowlands of the testing ground, Voss discovered a hatch. Hidden. Old. Not alien. Terran. He stared at it for a long time before kneeling. Brushed away ash and bone. It had a manual override. He twisted it open. Inside, a chamber sealed in atmospheric stasis. A console. Flickering. Old Earth command tech. And one phrase blinking across the screen. Prototype observation base. Status. Redacted. Files decrypted. A map of the testing zone. Hundreds of kilometers. Multiple apex threats. All seeded by the Accord over time. None were meant to leave this place. This wasn't just a trial. It was a prison. He saw names in the logs. Other humans. Years ago. Disavowed. Discarded. They had died here. And the Accord had lied. He turned to the camera embedded in the corner of the room. You used us. Back in the station, the feed glitched. Audio resumed, only as static. But the look on his face told the story. Voss knew now, and knowing hadn't broken him. It had forged him. He left the chamber and marked it with fire. A message in flame. One word. Truth. He would not be their specimen. Not their test. If they wanted war, he would bring them one. And he would not come alone. The fires burned across Deadless. 9 like veins of anger, bright and defiant against the planet's gray desolation. Voss stood at the summit of a ridgeline, silhouetted against the storm-lit sky, eyes fixed on the far horizon where the orbital landers would descend. His muscles ached with fatigue beyond reason, but he remained upright, jaw clenched. There was no rest. Not yet. He had ignited more than a signal fire. He had set the truth ablaze. The Accord couldn't ignore it now. Not the Council, not the silent observers, not the empires cloaked in diplomacy and distance. Their experiment had failed, not because their predator was weak, but because their understanding of humans had been naive. They had tried to measure humanity in terms of threat. They had underestimated the cost of cornering a species born from survival. From the fractured remains of the observation base, Voss had scavenged comms gear and modified his helmet array. With the uplink reconnected, his voice cut across the black between stars. This is Sergeant Elias Voss, Earth Command. Deadless. 9 is compromised. Your containment has failed. Apex entities neutralized. Human presence remains. This world is no longer yours to observe. You want control. He paused, letting silence follow. Come and take it. The transmission echoed into systems he couldn't see. Across command bridges, diplomatic halls, and black sites hidden behind bureaucratic mirages. On Earth, in colonies, and within the classified spires of lunar outposts, alarms triggered. The message was flagged under highest priority. Red threat condition. Contact confirmed. On the orbital platform, chaos bloomed. Delegates shouted. Analysts scrambled. The Terran representative, Faradine, simply smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice quiet amid the panic. This is what happens when you make war a laboratory exercise. You're not alarmed? A Jandari queried. I'm human, she replied. I'm proud. General Orvac snarled. If we allow him to live, it's a declaration of rebellion. Farah turned to him, measured and cold. He's not rebelling. He's surviving. And survival isn't sedition. It's legacy. Back on Deadless. 9. Voss tracked the new heat signatures. Dropships entering low orbit. He recognized the configurations. Not rescue craft. Not reinforcements. Kill teams. The Accord had decided to erase the mistake. He moved fast, gathering the crude weapons he had built, securing his armor as best he could. The predators had stopped attacking, either dead or retreating. They had become prey. The new danger came in the form of elite combatants, biologically engineered, armor-clad, trained in methods more terrifying than the beasts ever were. He prepared anyway. They descended in formations, swift and efficient. No posturing, no threat displays. These were assassins, not soldiers, tasked with one mission: erase the human. The first engagement was brutal. They came with plasma and blade, shielded and swift. But Voss knew the terrain like a brother now. He used smoke vents and broken structures to divide and isolate them. His ambushes were primal, but effective. He didn't win through superior firepower. He won through superior refusal. Bodies fell, not without cost. A blade found his side, carving deep. Another cracked his forearm. But he pushed past it, wrapped the wound in thermo-weave, and kept moving. He couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the Accord had declared his life irrelevant. Above, a vote had begun. Emergency session. Whether to authorize orbital strikes. "We created this," said one delegate, haunted. "We made a trial and gave it stakes." He responded, with fury, yes, but also clarity. "There's a code in him. A code we didn't write. We can't let him reach an evac point," snapped another. "If he escapes this planet, the myth becomes uncontrollable." "It already is," Faradine whispered. Voss reached the uplink tower, just as the second wave came. He was nearly broken, breathing in gasps, blood loss mounting. But he climbed, shot out lights, rigged the base with charges. When they followed, he collapsed the structure. They died in the wreckage. And he stood again, on trembling legs. He activated the beacon he'd modified. A response came, not from Earth, not from the Accord, from survivors. Scattered voices across broken bands. Others discarded, forgotten. Human operatives lost in early testing. Left to die. They weren't dead. Not all of them. The signal became a rally. Within hours, the Accord detected 6 new flare points on Deadless 9. 6 human life signs converging. The experiment hadn't isolated one man. It had incubated a resistance. And now they had a leader. Let them come. Voss growled to the storm, to the sky, to the universe. We'll show them what it means to be prey. The final council session convened in emergency. Some voted to carpet bomb the planet. Some voted to offer negotiation. But the decision came not from them. It came from fear, from a realization too late to matter. The predator they had engineered wasn't an alien. It was human, and it wasn't alone. On Deadless 9, Voss stood with the others, wounded, half-armored, burning with purpose. They had come from the caves, the ruins, the wild, united not by rank, but by rage. Above them, the stars shifted. Ships retreated, not out of mercy, out of calculation. What they had unleashed could not be contained. Not anymore. And as the fires burned through the alien soil, reflected in the eyes of those too stubborn to die, one truth stood immortal. The galaxy had watched a man tear apart an apex predator with his bare hands. Now it would watch what happened when that man led a pack.